This individual right here is doing the video about hazing. Hazing in African American University. And we all got to recognize, number one, the number of people that actually get into a highly hard learning university, APWY or the HBCU, the numbers of people that even pledge a fraternity or sorority within the numbers of African Americans that go to college is probably like 5%, 5% maybe or less. It's not large at all. Okay. Number two, he's talking about rituals and the issue of deaths, and he's talking about how people have died because, as he stated, young kids are hazing younger kids with the knowledge of men who are my age, 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, because of the fact that the system is designed for brothers to keep their mouth shut and not snitch. I said snitch. I'm gonna watch the video and I'm going to give my opinions on it from my experience as an individual who went to a PWI, who actually decided to become a member of an organization after many hours of meditation and thinking about it, who went through that process. And I want to talk about the good, the bad. There's some things I disagree with the brother saying, and there's some things I agree with him. I'm also going to give some counter arguments to help anybody that watched this video ask these really important questions. And the questions I'll open up with is this: should a person give their life to join an organization? No. And I give you that answer straight up: no. Do you think that members joining a Divine Nine or a white university under the Panhellenic, National Panhellenic is African, Panhellenic is white, European. Do you think that the brothers wanted to kill the members that decided to join the organization? The answer is no. So the next question would then lead you to ask, why do these kids die? Why do these incidents happen? A lot of the deaths that he's going to talk about in this video happen because of men doing stupid things, such as hitting men in the chest, in the face, doing things that are physically violent. Even as hard as the Marine Corps is, and they do a lot of stuff that's worse than any HBCU, because the difference with the Marines is that it's men in their 30s doing it to kids who are 18. It's the drill sergeants that are 30 doing it to somebody who's 20. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, it's because of going to war and understanding that the risk of death is high. Learn how to defend yourself, take pain, take punishment is critical. The interesting thing about the organizations, the so-called fraternity, is that it's voluntary, and it's like the military. At the same time, it's supposed to be about helping the small brothers and sisters that are of African American descent go through college and have a system of connection. As African Americans who are descended of slaves in America, we already know that we're really good at destroying, because we have been judged by God and judged by mankind as being the worst group of people, as being weak, being inferior. America's taught us that tremendously well. But it's not just America, man. It's across the United States, and I mean the world. You go to other countries in the world, and you find out that Africans are going through the same thing. It isn't different. It's not different over there. It's the same. The question is, how many generations has been over here versus over there? Well, Europe is way older than America, so that means that the prejudice and racism over there has been going on way before the United States was founded in 1776. Then on the aspect of colleges, Universities were not really founded until 1867. Howard University, Tuskegee University, and many of the HBCUs that our black ancestors went to, the majority of blacks could never go to a white school until 1969. That's after Dr. King was murdered, okay? And it wasn't until the 70s. This is why knowing history is so important, in essence, to just talking about this issue, because it's a very complex issue. This brother went to Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. He is going to tell you out of his own mouth, and this has to be important because whenever you hear me speak, you speaking or on your experience plus your opinion from your experience, and he is doing the same thing. A lot of people are going to say, I agree 100% that no one should die, okay? And that's facts. I would say 100%. I also say that most people never expected someone to die. Better, safeguards should be in place to make sure men don't do stupid stuff like drive if they've been up all night and they can't drive, so they get in an accident, like what happened to the four girls, adult Sigma Theta, that their sorority made them work so hard that they will end up falling asleep at the wheel, that nobody said, hey, let's sit down, go to sleep in the car for 3 hours, get some energy, and then drive. I've been driving for 30 years. If I'm ever tired and I know I'm tired, I will park to the side at a rest stop and get some rest in my car. You got sorority girls, and they are normally brothers or sisters in becoming a member of an organization, or in groups of at least two, sometimes one. I would feel bad for anybody that decides to be a member by themselves, because that's kind of like there's no brotherhood. Having a brother to go through the process with is very similar to the military, and that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. As a former soldier who went through the basic training process versus the college process, ROTC, I can tell you straight up, ROTC or college, wearing a uniform once a week, meeting once a week, basically still drinking, partying, doing all the college stuff, and then you go to ROTC class, isn't the military. As an enlisted person going to basic training for 3 straight months nonstop, every day and night, fire watch at night, or your bed is set. That is a transformative process that even today millions of veterans still talk about, because it was transformative. And I have to say, as we've had men in the military die as well. A lot of times they don't say this, but this is true. Some people are not healthy at 19, at 20, at 25. So they shouldn't even be getting involved in physical fit activities. But if no one says, I want a medical report on you before you join my organization, because that would tantamount say we will haze you. But the thing I think about is this: with the number of brothers who are dying within my fraternity of heart disease and high blood pressure and strokes, a lot of times you have a part to play in your early death. It's not always the frat did this, the frat made you do that. In some cases, yes, brothers could be ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you my story because I want to remind myself of what I went through as an individual who is going to always remember that experience, just like I always remember my base training experience in 1992. I will always, 92, yeah. I will always remember in my advanced camp, my AIT experience in 93 and my advanced camp experience in 94. Those 3 years were straight military experiences for me. But so are everyone else that's in the military. But when it comes to organizations like Hazing, the fact of the matter is, this guy is not going to tell you it's wrong, the right things. He has no positive about it. He left the fraternity, and he comes from the standpoint of his, in essence, everyone should not be a part of a fraternity. but he doesn't give a what should you do. And there's a question that's going to be raised in the video. He's going to skip it, where the guy says, it should not be free. Nothing you do should just be given to you. You should earn something. How do you earn your spot? In essence, how do you prove your worth? One of the things in African community and overseas in Africa is that when a brother is at a certain age, he goes to a rite of passage. Everyone knows this. Not Africans, Europeans, the Japanese, the Chinese, every group of people, when they're raising their kids, put their kid through some type of passage. My so-called Jewish individuals, they have the bar mitzvah. Every race has something like that. Now, the other side of the coin is, if hazing or rites of passage, as I call them, wrong because of the brothers that died, what if no one died? What if people went through the process and not one person died? Would there be a person to say there should not be any organizations that do any pledging? Yes, I think so. I think exactly why. Why? Because someone's always going to have a negative to say about anything about this process. They negative about joining any group. There's always a individual that starts something and then doesn't finish. I was in the army, and I tell you something. You go to basic training, and you already know there's going to be somebody in your platoon that's going to quit. The drill sergeant's their responsibility is to motivate you to stay, but it's always going to be someone to quit. And it may be even someone that actually does worse. They may kill themselves, but they had issues in their mind, in their heart, before they joined. It's what I'm trying to make you understand. It just wasn't the process of going through basic training that made them do it. It was the fact that what you were weak in was drawn out. The military said this a long time ago. We break you and then we remake you. We break you down and remake you. And you know what? Everybody in life, especially my African American brothers who grow up with single parent homes, they need to be broken and remade. They need to be broken and remade. They need to be broken and remade. So as we watch this video, I ask you to ask yourself this question for your brothers and sisters and your friends and family that are in jail and in prison and doing drugs. What if those brothers were broken and remade into strong black men and women? Do you think they would even attempt the drug? Do you think they would go to prison for murder, killing somebody, doing something harm? If they had a value system that was remade by people that taught them. And that brings the question up that I know you're thinking about is, what if you were being pledged by someone who's just a couple of years older than you, and they are doing these things to you? That, my friend, I have to say, is why I wish that there was an official mentorship line of the order. Because I'm gonna give you an example of I'm a part of a great chapter in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the best chapters in the state of Georgia, the number one chapter in the state of Georgia, because the majority of chapters are in Atlanta. And when you go south, there's pretty much no blacks down south because Georgia's a Confederate state, Civil War state. The land is still owned by non-African Americans, so blacks don't live down there. There's not really any jobs down south in Savannah and Waycross and Valdosta. You down there unless you were born there. That's pretty much it. But to just move to that area, nah, I wouldn't do that. Most wouldn't. If you're of African American descent, that's why they live here in Atlanta. And so my chapter is called Lambda Sigma, and it's been around for 101 year, 101 years old. And being 101 years old, my chapter is 100, my fraternity is 105 years old, but my chapter is 101 years old. It's one of the first chapters founded in the United States after Howard University, our headquarters. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and I crossed on April 16th, 2005 at 05:35 a.m. to the last beat of my LB's heart. And that was 35, 36, 37, 38. It was four of us. and we crossed the burning sands through those times. And that was something we memorized because we had to remember, and as the process he's going to talk about, we had to document, recite, and meditate and memorize, just like in basic training. You recite, you document, you meditate, you memorize your general orders, your rules, everything. So what I'm going to say is, if you never served your country, you cannot understand what hazing is. But those who serve their country understand it instantly what I'm talking about. And remember, because it's only 1% of people served, that's 99% of y'all out there who will never understand. And then the African American community, it's even, like I said, probably more because we got a smaller community. I would say 50% know about Greek fraternities and sororities, but those that pay the money and pay the dues, they do it for the really just to be a part. They never really stay within it. They never stay connected, and to use hazing as a reason is really sad because a lot of people were never hazed. They went through the process, as we call it, the paper process. They filled out the paperwork. They paid their money. They got the PDF. They memorized the information. They had their actual presentation. They crossed, and then they had their probate. And then the next year, you never see them again. And the year after that, you never see them again. The year after that, you never see them again. The year after that, you never see them again. 15 years later, you never see them again. They went through all of that. They paid all their money to join an organization and volunteer an organization. And then they don't even work and do anything in it. Why is that, I ask? And I give you my answer. Because they didn't earn their spot. It was given to them. So, in counter to what this brother's saying about some chapters that are doing, and I call it stupid things, such as hitting a kid and causing cardiac arrest, most chapters aren't doing that. And so that's why I want to make you understand. It is not even 90% of chapters, not even 99%, I would say 1% of chapters in the Divine Nine do this. And they get caught. They get caught. And those guys get expelled and they go to jail now. Praise the Lord. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, he's trying to make it seem like 100% of the brothers get hazed because they make a definition of any type, and this is where it gets real legalistic. Law school, this law school. Any type of thing that someone makes you do, such as run, is hazing. What if you're obese, and fat, need to lose weight, or and someone says you need to go run? They could consider that hazing. Now that person is obese, going to have a heart attack and a stroke, and die, and needs to run to save his life. And he don't know that. He goes and say, I want to join an organization, but he's tremendously overweight. He's gonna die. Maybe someone need to come to that brother and say, bruh, get your butt and your waistline below 40 inches. Live, man. I'm a part of a fraternity that has a lot of overweight brothers. I mean, it's kind of so so tragic. Hi, man. No, no. Thank you. It's so tragic because of the fact that the brothers that I've seen have been they're just tremendously overweight, and sadly, I am so very how should I say it? I am so grateful that there's some type of physical fitness standard within the organizations. Yet it's not written. It's not like the military where there was a height and weight standard, and it's always been. I think there should be a height weight standard in the fraternities because it will help them live a longer life. It'll build discipline in their bodies, the number one thing they need to be able to survive. Now, of course, you don't ever hear nobody talk about physical fitness and physical health within the fraternity, but it's very, very important. I can admit to this to you. But again, the lawyer would say this is hazing, right? Because you haven't run. Now, exorbitant type of physical fitness, no. But that's the difference between having something and having nothing. Again, having, as we call it, a paper process where you join, pay your $2,000, go to 6 weeks of class, take a test, and then become a member, have a probate, and then you never see that brother ever again, is not the answer to this question that this guy is trying to tell you. It's not the answer. At the same time, the answer is it beats a kid to death. So both extremes are correct. There's a middle ground, and that's what I'm going to be arguing. Let's get started. I want you to just let this middle part, then we'll go back because I want you to hear him talk about himself. He went to Georgia Tech. Listen to what he says right here as I go back. Tap this, go back 1 minute to about right here. We're gonna go back to the probate. This is the probate. This is what everyone, when they see the fraternity, all see, and that is the finish line. So we're gonna start off by watching the finish line, then we're gonna go back and then watch to hear him talk about the actual uh, process he went through, and he's gonna also interview some people, keep them hidden, of course, and then quote unquote um, talk about it. And the end result, from the get go, he wants basically that all fraternities to stop hazing, and also he left the fraternity. So in essence, his ultimate goal is to decommit. He doesn't. He has, as we call it, me fi me. He's really not involved in anything other than making these videos to come against the fraternity. He could be doing so many other things in life, but he feels like it's his purpose to make these videos. And it's my purpose as a brother to watch them. A lot of brothers will probably not care. They just let it go. But this affects the future. This affects our kids that are thinking about it, because if he can have his channel giving his opinion, so can we. Amen.
Instead of beating on us. After that, you're a full member of the chapter, and it's time to debut for the campus at large in your probate show. There's flyers made, a promo video, you get a crispy haircut and dope outfits, and the whole black community shows up to celebrate your moment. There's step choreography we worked on for weeks, elaborate songs and funny skits we had to practice performing every night. Then each member gets their big moment. Step out, say your name, remove your mask, crowd goes wild, women ooh and ah. Half the people there knew you were doing it, and the other half didn't know you at all. For them, it's a hell of an intro. Parents and siblings show up, significant others hold balloons with your number, all that. I didn't have any of it because I was essentially cut off from my community in Atlanta and kept a secret from them, granted. Didn't really care too much though, to be honest. I was just happy to talk to my friends and return to normalcy again. You
Now let's answer the question: why would someone join an organization to know that when I get to the finish line, I don't even celebrate? I don't even have my family come. Now everyone knows, for example, he pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the second fraternity in the history of the Divine Nine fraternities and sororities, 1906 when they were founded at a university called Cornell. So the fact of the matter is, he went to Georgia Tech. This is an elite school that is predominantly, I would say, 90% non African. They may have less. I think they have less than 5% African Americans there, at least five. Okay. At my school, I went to University of Oklahoma, another top school. We had 10% African Americans in our student life. We call it student union. In their black student union, they probably got less than 5%. Georgia Tech is called Georgia Engineering Technical University. Basically, it's for engineers. So to go to GT, you already going to be what I am. I'm an engineer myself, except I took a back road around the engineering, the back road way, instead of having the great grades and top notch high school diploma to go to one of these great schools. Now, if I had a great parents, like a lot of these people do, that path but set your pathway up, man, boom. But most people can't get in GT unless they really, really have been blessed to have that education. So he was already, in a sense, like not loyal. He didn't have anybody, I would believe, that was a part of the Alpha Phi fraternity. It seems to me, opinion, that's an opinion. He was doing this as a member by himself, and he decided not even to have his family come. He was the tail, as he says, TAIL, the last person on the line, which is the tallest brother in the line, as we go by height order. I was the ace, the shortest person in my line of four. And so, as a brother of Phi Beta Sigma, I could tell you my story, and I'm going to talk about it throughout the video. But I had a choice between Alpha Alpha or Phi Beta Sigma. I had a brother who was Alpha Alpha, who I worked with at OU, and he wanted me to join. His name was Walter Lewis III, educated black man, came from elite family in Houston, Texas, and he is an engineer. I wanted to be an engineer. That kind of drew us there. Great men like Dr. Martin Luther King were alphas. You study the history of AFIA, you find some great men. They all come from they've done some great financial elite things. Well, I didn't grow up in that type of environment, which then affected me during joining because, again, I also recognized organizations have a culture just like any business. So once you join that organization, you must accept that culture. If you don't accept that culture, you will no longer be a part of the organization. That's why, like I said, people will join an organization and they find out, "Well, I don't like it," and they leave. My biggest thing is if you decide to join, do your research before you join. That's why I'm making this video, to talk about this. Because a lot of these things, it seems that he has not done his research. And it just seems like he joined because as you hear him talk, it sounds like I had really, I did not understand the values of the rituals and the knowledge that they were teaching me. I'm more concerned about the physical hazing that I and others have gone through. And he was not killed. He didn't go to the hospital. He was never murdered. But others have. And his argument basically is that I wanted to, throw out the whole bathwater with the one or two or three incidents that happened at these 125 universities and 200 plus chapters across the United States. Yeah, think about how many. This week, my fraternity is celebrating our conclave in Tampa, Florida. That's why this kind of hits hard. Last week, AK celebrated their conclave. Adult Sigma Theta celebrated their conclave. Sigma Gamma Rho celebrated their conclave. We call this convention summer. All of the Divine Nine as a search conclave or a convention. That's what we call it. And this week is ours. And so the fact of the matter is, the brothers that have been members of the organization for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, some of them 80 years, because God has given them long life. They pledged when they were 20 and they're 100 years old. We have a brother in my fraternity who is 101, and he's, praise God, outlived everybody in his immediate family, but he's got great, 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 great grandchildren that take good care of him. Great, great. That's a blessing. Amen. But at the same time, I can say there's not one place that I've found on earth in my lifetime, I'm over 50, where I can be around men who are successful and are doing great things in the community. I can't find anything. It's not the church. We have massive churches in here in Atlanta, Georgia. But all of you out there outside Atlanta, we know y'all don't have great churches because the numbers of African Americans are small. So where are you going to be able to go around to find success? I'm talking 50, 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 great men to meet and network with if you're not a part of any organization. Every organization has a pledging process. Every organization has a, what we call, rite of passage. But again, instead of him talking about, well, let's work on how we can make this a better process, he feels like I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now let's go to the top and let's kind of walk from the beginning. Here we go. He's sitting outside and doing a video out here, and it's done really good. So, but let's go.
Caleb Wilson was a 20-year-old junior from Kenner, Louisiana. He was a member of the world-famous Human Jukebox at Southern University and majored in mechanical engineering. He collapsed and died on February 27, 2025, while participating in an off-campus and unsanctioned fraternity ritual allegedly conducted by members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. According to the latest reports, the fraternity members lied about Caleb's death, claiming it happened when he passed out while exercising. In all likelihood, Caleb was punched in the chest along with the other pledges. That led to a seizure he never recovered from. His family said his passion for life, his dedication to his studies, and his love for music and the Southern University Human Jukebox Marching Band were just a few of the many qualities that made him an extraordinary person. Omega Psi Phi undergraduate chapters are allegedly responsible for the deaths of at least 5 other pledges dating back to 1978. My name's Cam James. I was abused by an undergraduate chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I participated in abusing others in 2 separate semesters after I was initiated.
Okay. I'm so sorry, man. I wasted time talking and I didn't turn the mic on. Remember, mic must be turned on. Okay, I apologize for the. I'm going to have to cut that last 5 minutes because I said some good stuff, but the mic wasn't recording. So what I try to remember what I said because it was so good. The last thing this brother I wanted to say was the last thing this brother said was basically Caleb was he starts off with with a bad thing, starts off with the death, and he does also talks about how he allegedly died. The young man that died was Caleb Wilson. He was at Southern University, which again is in Louisiana, um, and it's a very well wide known fraternity. I mean university, just like Howard University. And in the African American circles and the African American higher education, there are very few actual places where the African American go to college and get an education in two worlds, one in the white world and two in the black world. Very few places. Most of us either got to go to a European university, educate the European language, the liberal arts and sciences, and then leave to get a job to go into the world. Or two, we borrow or we go to HBCUs if we got family to support us, and we try to get both the African American culture, meaning meet our husband, meet our wife, to get married, and we also want to make friends and connections at the same time get our degree. I will submit to a lot of us that went to HBCUs that went a lot of them that went to HBCUs because I didn't get a chance to go to. They have a stronger bond amongst themselves, despite what you heard about these so-called deaths at the fraternities, compared to those of us that went to PWIs. We all know it, but I would also submit to say this: before President Trump, African Americans had a better opportunity at PWIs than they ever had at HBCUs until Trump. Because at least the Republicans tried through these programs such as TRIO to give us individuals at white universities opportunities because they knew that we were disenfranchised. We call it today DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, you know what happened? They destroyed that, and again, that's exactly what the majority wants. God hasn't judged them on it. I can't wait till God does judge the Europeans in America for it because they're wrong. But until He does that, we got to deal with it. But I will admit and have to say I saw it coming when I was in school back in 2005 to 2009. My experience as a vice president of my fraternity was that Oklahoma gave us $1,000 every. That was it, $1,000 every year, ongoing. Now that's nothing when you think about the amount of millions that these white fraternities get with the money they get from the people, the parents that pay for their kid to be in a dorm, or we call it a boarding house. And we're talking these immaculate homes. Matter of fact, just the house behind this guy right here, that's the kind of house, except it's like 4 or 5 times bigger. That's the kind of house that's on the fraternity row of my University of Oklahoma. And you go to any university of any state, you will see the same thing. Where is the house for African American fraternities and sororities? There is none on a house, on a campus. There is none. We have to get apartments based upon the brother who had the most money, and that house or that apartment becomes the frat house. That's how it was in 2005 when I became a member. That's how it is today. Okay? Working with less is what I'm trying to say. That's just the way it is. We're still under the curse. Again, I stated earlier, we as African American people are really good at tearing down stuff. We're horrible at building up our people. That's why the battle right now between jollof rice and jambalaya is huge. Have met Nigerian people, and I'm proud to say that I'm glad to know my biological DNA. Instead of saying I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, from Oklahoma City, from Norman, Oklahoma, from Atlanta, Georgia, I'm more than that. Just like my Europeans will say they're Scottish, they're German, they're French, Romanian, they're more than that. But we as African Americans can't say that because of most of us. we only look at ourselves as being a slave. And that mindset has got to be broken in our hearts. And the fraternities, if you read the literature and you study the history and you really apply it to your life, more than talking about what kind of hazing you got. And a lot of these, and I'm going to make this statement before I keep going, a lot, I probably say 99% of brothers never been hurt, hit, beat down, killed, stomped. I never, ever was punched in the face, punched in the chest. I did do some, and I admit this, some things like eating dog food. Yeah, I could. I have had that. I have had to get swats. Okay, I'm gonna say this is honesty. But you talk to any brother that was part of the black organization, they got their stories as well. But I was in the military and went to basic training, and I deal with worse than that. I mean, the stuff I went through at a PWI, and we were being treated or trained or um, mentored by a HBCU in Oklahoma called Langston. Langston, Oklahoma is the only HBCU in the whole state. It's like Morehouse and Spelman combined. And all the blacks that had money went to Langston, and all those blacks that didn't have money had to go to OU. And I couldn't afford 41,000 bucks a year to live on a dorm. It's really antiquated. But I will say this: I will go to the HBCU Langston. That was about 40 miles north of me in Guthrie. My university was in Norman, Oklahoma, and I had I had the best time in the world. Fortunately, I had a car and I could drive. But again, for a lot of blacks that go to PWIs, they may never go to a HBCU, so they don't even have a framework. When you live on a campus as a PWI and you don't see a black for the whole week because your degree is a business and it's a white degree and the university is predominantly white, and to get in needs a 3.0, to stay in a 3.5. Our blacks don't have the grade point average. They ain't getting in. So whatever. So I would be in the classroom. I'm the only black. That's the way it is. But if I went to HBCU, that would be different. So I do come from a PWI experience, but I am connected to and talk to people who are part of the HBCU experience as well.
I recently watched Hazing, a brilliant documentary produced by Byron Hurt of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated that explores hazing in all types of organizations: fraternities, sororities, bands, sports, the military, etc. I'd already planned to make this video after Caleb's death, but watching that film made it clear that there was a way for me to contribute something unique to the story. Byron's film mostly covers it in a way that impacts members of Greek organizations and parents of students. What I'm presenting here is the through line from arriving on campus as a freshman to getting abused as a sophomore. I'd argue it's necessary for people on the outside looking in to walk through it themselves and see how this happens to people. I recently spoke to my girlfriend's older brother about this, and he pointed out that everyone gets got in life. We all get scammed, tricked, or manipulated, and our primary responsibility, once we realize it, is to decide what to do next. I also interviewed an unofficial member of.
Okay, so I'm going to just keep going because you heard him just skip real fast to the second guy, but he just kind of overshadowed that first guy. He said get got. It's the frame he used. He said people get got. And I'm gonna state this, and I got maybe a little background noise, but if there is, I'll talk aloud. But get got. The reality, if you're African American, you even get to higher education. You've come or overcame a tremendous amount of roadblocks because the number of African American men that go to a university, probably less than 5%. They said I was told that the number of people in America that has a college degree is like 15%. I'm talking white, black, red, yellow, all races. And then that's bachelor. And then less masters is like less than that. Doctorate's 1%. But one of the things about being a part of a fraternity is that if you see doctors, doctorates, doctors of philosophy, everyone, it's about getting their professional education. It motivates you to continue to go to school. It motivates you to be elite. Hopefully, you use it for the right reasons. A lot of people don't, and that's on them. But where on earth do you see that within the African American community? You don't see it in church because most churches, they don't go to seminary no more to be pastors. You just get a 2 year Bible degree and now you're preaching. You don't see that in regular jobs because most African Americans don't. Like I said, you go look up statistics. The number of African Americans that have bachelor's degrees, they're low. The number of black men, 18 and up, that have bachelor's degrees are higher or low. Believe me, the statistics being done. You go to Black Greek demographic, blackdemographics.com to get the statistics, and I'll get those later. The other side of the coin is you're gonna hear this guy jump, and then again, we're gonna go look at the Byron Hertz video because Byron Hertz experienced what Omega Psi Phi just recently about Caleb affects them. I don't know if you know, but Omega Psi Phi is in bankruptcy right now. Their headquarters was founded in D.C., like Phi Beta Sigma, but they're here in Atlanta because they did not want to stay in D.C. I don't know why they're not at Howard University. That's where they were born. But for some reason, it's in Atlanta. And when I go over to Atlanta, to where their so called headquarters is, it's in a dying place. But just like, guess what? Phi Beta Sigmas was in a dying place too. Most of us are still, or I'm talking about organizations, we're still behind the 8 ball compared to our white organizations. And for the white organizations, this is a fact. After the people graduate, what I'm going to call them, excuse me, after most of the Europeans graduate, they never go back. They don't care about the fraternity or sorority. It was all a purpose to get married, to get family, to meet their husband, to get their Mr. and MRS degree. Different from the blacks, far different from us. All right?
My chapter called a ghost. That basically means a person who was hazed and didn't even get their letters officially. We're not supposed to talk about this. We're all sworn to secrecy as part of the pledging process, so this is inherently dangerous. When I say dangerous, I mean it's likely that I'll be ostracized by my chapter and their extended network. I called my line brothers to tell them I was doing this, so I wouldn't put them in a compromising position, but I'll probably be harassed and insulted in the comment section of this video. And yes, I'm very aware that all of the above is highly reminiscent of cult tactics. That isn't a coincidence. Here's my assertions. None of the Divine Nine fraternities or sororities were founded with violence built into their initiation guidelines. All of them have either murdered and or seriously injured pledges via abuse inflicted by chapter members. These practices don't have the intended effect, are rooted in cult tactics and America's legacy of slavery, and do more to ostracize and damage members than anything else. Quick definitions and notes. The Divine Nine, or D9, stands for the 9 Black Greek letter organizations founded on college campuses in the 20th century. Those 9 are on screen right now. They're also referred to as NPHC organizations, which stands for the National Panhellenic Council. 5 of them were founded at HBCUs, with 4 of those all being Howard University. But the first one was founded at Cornell University as a solidarity group for 7 Black students. Regardless of location, These organizations were created to serve their communities and help keep their members safe from the oppressive academic atmosphere that surrounded them. I'll only be presenting one story of abuse for every member organization in the NPHC, but know that many of them have murdered multiple people, sometimes simultaneously. One of
Did you notice how quickly he overshadowed their supposed to help the community? But he's worried, but he didn't go right into they murdered people. Listen to how he frames it. They murdered people. The organization as a whole murdered that person because why? They're part of the organization, so I'm going to blame the whole organization. Notice he's blaming the whole org for the actions of an individual, just like blaming the whole army for the actions of one soldier. And the reality is, no one does that. You don't blame the whole army for the actions of one soldier. We have what's called unified code of military justice that will judge that person for the acts they do. Conduct unbecoming an officer, conduct unbecoming an enlisted soldier. There are rules. Well, guess what? There are rules we have in the fraternities too. So the fact of the matter is to say the organization killed, that is a misnomer from a guy who never fully accepted the organization he joined. Just like he wants to make his assertion, I'm making my assertion. And this guy can say what he wants to say. I can say what I want to say. But I have more people on my side than he has on his. And so for all the guys out there and girls out there who left these organizations, that some may say I was a great volunteer, I put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the organization, I quit. Well, if you did and you have a reason, that's you. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. I'm working out my own. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a guy like this gentleman, I believe, who has not even really been active in the national, in the regional, and obviously his state organization, A5A, Alfalfa, to build up any type of clout, I think he wouldn't be even willing to do these videos. He would say, yes, we have hazing, but everyone's not doing it. But see, when a person goes all the way to the other side to say, if one doesn't blame the whole baby, that's like I said. Do you blame the whole army for one soldier doing something illegal in Iraq? No. You judge that person. You put that person in the Leavenworth. That person gets the death penalty. That person dies, not the organization. The Holy Spirit just gave me a good analogy to use in this situation because this video, as you see, is really trying to educate non-Greeks, as if they don't know. Do you know how many thousands of European people go to college, join an order? Man, they got so many. They have what's called a rush, R-U-S-H. A rush means that you have a day where thousands of white students go to these rich fraternities and sororities, walk through the doors, and then they interview to rush. And they are so selective. These organizations, because the demand is so high, these organizations are so selective, they can pick who they want to become members. The Divine Nine organizations on most colleges, especially PWIs, because it's more PWIs than colleges that are the non PWIs. The numbers of African Americans on that white campus is so low. You have less than probably a 1% chance of getting 5 to 7 brothers per year. We've had in my fraternity, my fraternity was founded in 1982 on my university campus. And 5 brothers that were brought into the fraternity. The fact of the matter is they averaged 5 members up until 2005. I left the school. I left the fraternity in 2009 when I graduated, and the fraternity between 2010 to 2020 was just extinct because the number of African Americans on campus was so low that we couldn't get brothers to join. could get brothers to join. We just got like two brothers join last year. And again, we're in 2025. So the fraternity was founded in 1982. We're in 2025. And OU is just like any university that's what we call a PWI, wealthy, multi-trillion-dollar university, research university, and the number of African Americans that even pledge or join African American fraternity or sorority are minuscule. Okay, so for this video, for him to be making it to come out and talk to those that are obviously not Greek. If you're black, you already know what a Greekdom is. The only blacks that may not know are individuals that have parents like me that didn't go to college because they would have never been around the campus. They would have never saw campus life. They would have never saw anything. But if they have family that have aunts and uncles that are part of the order, like in my family, you know about this experience. Now, as far as European, I argue again, they know even more. Animal House. There's a movie that came out like in the 80s with Jim Belushi. Animal House talked about it was fraternity and it was worse. We had School Days in '89, and that was ours with Spike Lee about Morehouse. So this video is really useless in a lot of ways because everything he's talking about, you've already heard. The only thing you haven't heard is about his own personal experience, which is what we all had in some ways. In some ways.
Them has critically injured or killed people into the double digits since their founding. Regardless of the death toll assigned to each logo, all of them have hundreds of serious injuries to account for at the very least. Kristen High, 22 years old, and Kenitha Saphir, 24 years old, drowned September 9th, 2002 at Dockweiler State Beach near Playa del Rey in California while participating in a pledging ritual allegedly conducted by unsanctioned members of an unidentified chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. The sorority's chapter at Cal State LA had been suspended for hazing at the time, apparently. Both women were students at Cal State in LA, and although their deaths were initially ruled accidental, a private investigation by PI Robert Freeman revealed that they were blindfolded and tied by their hands and their bodies and led into the riptide conditions of the ocean, the family's lawsuit says. That night, the waves were cresting at 6 to 8 feet and creating a strong undercurrent resulting from riptide. Saphir reportedly claimed she couldn't swim, but was forced to proceed regardless. After a large wave pulled her under, High died in an effort to rescue her.
This peels off the Band-Aid of an unhealed wound.
According to the LAPD, the bodies of Christian High and 24-year-old Kenitha Saphir of Compton were pulled from the surf around midnight.
According to her mother, Patricia, Kristen was always a type A daughter. Super student, athlete, campus leader, mother of a 2-year-old son. Joining Alpha Kappa Alpha was something she had always wanted. When two young women brought Kristen's car home, Patricia said Kristen's pledge journal was missing and numbers had been deleted from her cell phone. Kenitha's college sweetheart and husband of about 1.5 years shared this photo of her diary next to a pic of her in the car. In this note, she confirms that pursuing AKA membership was a dream of hers. This was the most recent deadly incident we know of in Alpha Kappa Alpha. Witnesses say they wore matching black sweatsuits, socks, and tennis shoes. This is exactly what we wore every night when I pledged Alpha. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let's talk about what made me join in the first place. So I enrolled in this pre-college program at Georgia Tech called Challenge. It had us rooming with about 30 to 40 other minority students the summer before our freshman year. So when the year started, we were really well situated and prepared to succeed. I actually stayed with one of my eventual chapter brothers my very first time visiting the campus, which was a coincidence, but ended up being an influential factor. The D9 was not something I was aware of since I was a military kid with no members in my family.
So that totally frames right there his right or his opinion to make a statement and make a video like this. He says he's a military brat. I was military. And the fact of the matter is, a military brat is not a military soldier. His father was a military soldier, obviously, to say he's a military brat. And I promise you, his father was hazed because every military hazes their soldiers or their sailors or their airmen, whichever branch you're part of. But the fact of the matter is, him as a brat, he said I had no knowledge. That's ridiculous. He obviously came from a poor family because if you have anybody that's African American that was born and he's about, I think 1980 kid, maybe was born in the 90s, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, my aunts were part of the Greekdom. These fraternities are 100 plus years old. I have aunts that went to university in the 50s, okay? The 40s. I'm talking about when racism was really, really bad. And guess what? They became members of that order. There was hazing back there too. Matter of fact, it was worse. But you can't sit back and blame the ladies that did stupid things to these two black women, putting them into an ocean and they can't swim in riptide current. That person deserves jail. But you can't throw out all of AKA because these buttholes did something so stupid. Just like you can't throw out a soldier, the whole United States military, because a soldier kills another soldier. For example, fratricide with the player that was killed in 9/11, who was a football player, an NFL player in Arizona Cardinals. He becomes a ranger. His brother becomes a ranger. They go to Afghanistan. Soldiers thought he gets separated from his platoon, goes up on a ridge. The people down below, which was his unit, thought that he was enemy. They started shooting. He had no way of basically explaining that he was a friendly, and died. Okay, died, killed by his own men. And the military covered it up. And they covered it up, and the parents fought like heck. They fought like heck to bring the people that were above to justice because the military covered it up by giving him honorable, discharge and a Silver Star, and it was wrong, but they wanted to put a good face on his death because he was such an American hero to go serve his country instead of playing for millions of dollars in the NFL because he was a patriot. Well, do you think that the military that the whole military shut down because his brother was killed? No. They done movies about it, yeah. But the military must go on because we have a war against other countries, and we have to have we have to have a defense. We have a war as African Americans against other races, and we have to have a defense. We have to have fraternities and sororities. But this frames everything that you're about to hear because he never was ever aware. It looks like he said he had no knowledge. To say I have no knowledge of, that defeats the argument of why. Because if he had a knowledge of, he would have said, my aunt told me, my cousin told me. No, this guy was blind. And this is what happens when you have a person that joins an organization like this with no knowledge. They quit. This is a normal pattern. We've seen it time and time again within the fraternities. Anybody who joins anything but doesn't have any connection or family that have been involved in it, they're doomed. They're doomed to quit. I never joined anything without researching it before I joined. And I talked to people, and I have family. I knew about the order. I knew about the issues, the hazing. We all knew. Of course, I say again, 99.99% of the brothers and sisters that pledge never experience anything. It's that 0.1% that do, and that's why he wants to only just that. Again, remember my analogy.
At least that's what I thought. Turns out my aunt pledged Delta, but she never talked about it. I was an avid basketball player and regularly ran pickup games at the campus rec center. It just so happens that most of the people I ended up making friends with in those games were members of either Kappa Alpha Psi or Alpha Phi Alpha. One of the Kappas pulled me to the side and discreetly invited me to an interest meeting. And I was going to go. Like, I didn't know anything about how taboo it is to go to multiple meetings for different organizations until I heard it from my fellow freshmen. This ain't like an informational meeting for the chess club. Your attendance means a serious interest. This was the first time a D9 organization left crucial information out of chapter communications, and it wouldn't be the last. I got the same invite from the Alphas around that time and had to make a decision. It was an opportunity to get more info about a campus organization that hosted dope events, did community service, had a legendary legacy full of civil rights leaders and other prominent black figures, and would give me additional opportunities to make the most of this steep ass tuition. Not saying those things didn't apply to the Kappas as well.
House Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries joined Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity at the age of 18.
But the Alpha brothers on that campus were most like me. I saw myself in them. Everyone's seeking something unique from their pursuit of membership in the D9. Cults, the military, religious groups, etc. They're following the legacy of their parents or extended family, pursuing the elevated social status brought by membership, seeking a sense of community, or a combination of the three. My family isn't the closest, and although I had plenty of friends, I grew accustomed to moving a lot and leaving my closest friends as a military kid. I wanted the sense of belonging and camaraderie that I saw in the chapter brothers. I was discussing this with my girlfriend and others as I wrote this, and the through line from slavery came up. Just like chattel slavery in the US, the D9 is a uniquely African American phenomenon. The way American black people were torn from our home continent, had our names erased, religion replaced, community destroyed, and family members sold off was a significant contributing factor to the establishment of these groups. If you're struggling to put yourself in the shoes of a person who chooses to pursue membership, I'd say that everyone's different and everyone has a different void to fill.
Who would actually be watching this? You got to always look at that, especially when you say about business. Anytime you make a video, you have to analyze the audience you're trying to do the video for. What is this guy's audience? Now, the algorithm brought this in front of me, but let's be clear. Most people not gonna care about this. Most Europeans don't care about this. Anybody who watches this are gonna be people that are interested to learn about the organization. But when you hear this title, Hazing in Black Fraternity, the real story, deep dives, the fact of the matter is it's all about talking about one area. And again, when I go back and look at this man's channel, here we go. Let's see what he say. Cold War, talking about terror to Tariq Nasheed, trying to sell merchandise. He's just jumping on all kinds of weird stuff. In essence, notice he's picking all of the issues of the black community, and he's really trying his best to talk about it from the negative. It makes a lot of money for people to focus only on the aspect of, as I said, highlighting the bad parts of African American. But the reality is, his life will copy this. When you sow seed, and you're gonna get results, and you're gonna get plants and trees coming back to him as a result of this. Study the scriptures.
There's a lot of people watching this who made it to one of these, but didn't go any further. To keep it short, interest meetings happen in some room on or off campus with one or more members of the chapter. You typically know most of the people in the room because you've seen them at campus events. You're expected to dress up in business formal clothes, and you're given a presentation about the chapter and what it means to be a member. This is followed by the steps you need to take to officially indicate interest in chapter membership. My first interest meeting was pretty short and had way more people in it than the second one. I later realized that the first meeting was so crowded because whoever's currently pledging has to attend one of these in order to join the fraternity on the national level. Some of us have literally never seen these people at the time, and sometimes that line gets dropped by the time you attend your next interest meeting, so they're just gone. The only people at my second interest meeting were the 4 19-year-olds who ended up becoming my line brothers, and another person that ended up deciding not to proceed before we became a line officially. All 4 that ended up being on the line were already friends of mine. At this stage, I essentially committed to becoming an alpha without being informed that we would be subjected to physical abuse. This is
What the heck are you talking about? How can you, as a military brat, having a military father, not understand this? I mean, what is wrong with this guy? I mean, yeah, you may not come from a big family of college grads, but to pledge an organization that's 100 years old and not know anything about hazing? Did you read any books about the organization? They've been talking about hazing since school days. I mean, everyone that is African American seen school days, except this guy. Because if he's seen it, he would have known what G5G was. That's what I want to become. Thank you. This guy was born way after 1989 when the movie came out. But the ignorance of what he just stated, like I said, it frames the statements he's going to make now.
the second time information was withheld from us. On February 15th, 1994, Michael Davis and 4 other individuals were being initiated as brothers to the Southeast Missouri State Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Davis and the other young men were slapped on their necks and backs, caned on their buttocks and feet, and beaten with heavy books and cookie sheets.
You pledged in Spring 89. Spring 89 lasted a divine. Did you go through the old school way of pledging at that time, or did they switch it around?
I went through the old school way, bro. This was at a period where, of course, they were cracking downs on hazing and things like that. And of course, Kappa Alpha Psi is a non-hazing fraternity. I got the respect and the notoriety with the brothers that were brought in an old school way. And I'm not saying it's always the best way. And I'm not saying that there aren't unhealthy things that every organization probably does traditionally that should not be done. But I was brought in before a lot of the crackdowns and everything happened with trying to make organizations more safer to enter. My entry into Kappa Alpha Psi was not safe. Can I say it that way?
Are you serious that Kim Fields was a Kappa sweetheart?
Yes, sir.
What did her brother pledge before you or after you?
Her brother pledged before me and pledged me.
Wow, what type of big brother was he?
He was not kind. He was not kind. I got introduced to a phone book by her brother because I forgot to call him.
Active fraternity members kicked, punched, and body slammed the 5 pledges. By the final day of the initiation process, 2 of the 5 dropped out, and the remaining 3 were put through a 7-station circuit of physical abuse. Davis passed out and later died from a number of injuries, including fractured ribs, lung, liver, and kidney damage, a bruised and bleeding heart, and spinal hemorrhaging. Michael's mother, Edith, said her son was a kind soul who couldn't kill a spider, and that his death was cold-blooded murder. The most recent death, allegedly but reliably connected to Kappa Alpha Psi, occurred in 2019 when pledge Marlon Jackson Jr. died in a car accident. It was alleged that his exhaustion was due to pledging, and that these were members of the fraternity in the car. What fraternity did you pledge and what year?
I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I crossed in 2013, fall in particular.
Are you a registered member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated?
I am not.
Why is that the case?
Because of the very topic that we're talking about. There were allegations of our chapter hazing at the time that ballooned into a larger situation. That situation ballooned into an investigation from the fraternity. We went through that. At that time, we were offline because the chapter wanted everything to blow over and make sure that everything was fine. That investigation came back with nothing against the chapter. However, the fraternity does not operate in innocent until proven guilty. They operate in a more likely than not. And if we had to do it, well, someone's got to take it. So they couldn't bring anything against the chapter at the time, so they instead placed me and my line brothers on the do not initiate list.
So you're not online as soon as you agree to pursue membership. There's an in-between process called pre-pledging. Chapters vary, but people occasionally give you a demeaning name, like the Crabs from Drumline during this part. Some just call you a pre-pledge and leave it at that. We were referred to as Sphinxmen, which was a nod to the Egyptian mythology the fraternity is tied to. Most of what we did during this phase was studying historical information, memorizing facts about our fellow pledges, practicing standing in line, passing information down that line, and basic teamwork exercises. The whole point of the process is supposed to be reinforcing the ideas of selflessness and sacrificing your ego for the good of the chapter. In my 19-year-old brain, everything made sense so far. You got to get rid of all that pride if you're going to serve your community and organization effectively, right? As an extension of that concept, we had to dress identically, commute to these meetings together, and maintain individual matching binders with chapter information in them. We were also required to call older members of the chapter who lived in the area, and we visited some of them too. We even helped one of them move, which seemed like a brotherhood building activity to me at the time, as opposed to indentured servitude. At least we got pizza. This next part is another area where chapters differ. Our Dean of Pledges, the person in charge of our pledging process, was big on Georgia Tech history. So we learned it in addition to Alpha history and Egyptian history. As we got closer to the official start of our pledging process, it became more obvious that reciting this information with military precision and accuracy was not only expected, but required. That was when the psychological abuse started. If we got something wrong while reciting information, our intelligence or ability to follow clear instructions was insulted in a way that would embarrass you in front of the rest of the pledges, while also making you want to prove yourself next time. They also explained the rules to us. Pre-pledging was when we started to withdraw from most friends and campus activities, stopped attending any non-essential meetings, and adopted chapter superstitions like not walking on grass or not using elevators since they represented shortcuts. I later realized that these restrictions were directly out of the cult playbook. If you eliminate someone's ties to outside influences, it's easier to put them through hell.
Just notice the statement he said. He called the organization a cult. It's how divisive he is. He called this organization a cult. And again, he's a guy who never was a part of any organization ever in his life. He grew up in a family, and obviously his dad failed him to teach him about these organizations because he probably wasn't a part of one either. A lot of people go in the military because, again, they have no other option. It's a great place to get a job and basically get paid little money, and you can have a big start on life if you don't waste it. But to having kids, your responsibility as a parent is to raise them to go to college, because that's the only reason why you went to the military in the first place, to give yourself a better head start in life because your parents failed you. If my mom had prepared for me to go to college, I would have never went to the military until after I got my doctorate. But that costs $200,000. But if my mama don't have that kind of money, then I gotta go to the military. You understand what I'm saying? But this way of saying it is ridiculous. We pull you away so that we can, as he worded, we can put you through hell. Well, that's the way the military does it. Look at Navy SEALs. Why do you think people want to be a Navy SEAL? Because it's the hardest training in the Navy. They don't want to be a Navy SEAL because anybody can be one. It's like you don't want to. That's just life. Humans do not want to join something that anyone can be a part of. That's why I said earlier, I'm a part of a membership intake process for my fraternity chapter here at Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and I was a part of the membership of a group of brothers, 8 of them, in 2023. We brought them in. We had interviews. It was completely non-physical, non-hazing. It was non-physical, and I went through the old way. It was physical. We took SWATs. We were hit, but we were never beaten to the point where somebody would pass out and could die. We did have one day where we had to run 5 miles, and we had an overweight guy on our line who could barely run, and we had to force that guy to run and stay with us. And his name was Raymond. I won't say his last name. And he, which we didn't know at the time, wanted to be a Kappa. But the Kappas have the same kind of process. They also have an issue with height and weight, which I respect. I think fraternities need height and weight standards the same way the military has them. You need to be disciplined in your physical body, especially at that young age. Especially at that young age. We can understand if you're 50, but not if you're 19. That's why right now the military has a hard time getting people in, because majority of 19-year-olds can't even make the height weight standards because they play video games all day, sitting on their own chair watching TV, playing these video games. So the reality is, he is obviously very intelligent, very smart, but he never at all had anybody that showed him what it was like being a part of the order. He was the first. And whenever you join something at the beginning and you don't really study before you start, you become angry when you see something like this. So what happened to my LB Raven? Well, he dropped. He tried to drop the once, and we talked him back in. And then once he went through the process, he finished. But and this guy was like a leader on campus. That's one of the reasons why we liked him. But he was a leader, and he was going to become a lawyer. He went to law school. He eventually became a lawyer. Took him about 10 years to do it, but he got it. And he's in Chicago, Illinois. Also, another side of the coin, which he doesn't talk about here, the aspect of homosexuality, LGBTQ. Yeah, the organization talks about pride, and everybody wants to push that whole LGBT crap. But the fact of the matter is, you'll see most people understand the Bible, understands that men and women are meant to be together, procreate, and make children, not men and men, not women and women. Again, it affects the organization as well because it affects the birth of families, right? So Raymond was part of that LGBTQ movement, and I was shocked. I was shocked. I was shocked. But he was. I did not like that. I was really against it. And, we also from different experiences. Like I said, I was in the military. Coming to college, he had never went to the military. And the experience that I experienced in the military were 15 times harder than what we were doing. And for the guys that are experiencing what they call hazing, man, that was just basically physical fitness training to get in shape. But, legalese, You can use the word hazing because that's what the lawyers have done. And when he's talking, don't look at his facial expressions. Focus on his words because when any of you are watching someone and you're speaking, listen to them speak, the facial expressions send a lot more negative connotations, as you'll notice, than the words. But the words is what you must remember because that's what he'll be judged on.
None of this was physical abuse. All that changed when the chapter brothers decided that we were ready for the next step. Were you subjected to hazing?
That's such an interesting question. The black and white of it is yes, but I guess we're diving right into my thoughts. I think that there's a difference between hazing and pledging, I will say. Um, to me, hazing is obviously the definition of it is doing something that puts people in harm's way intentionally. But I also think it's doing something that serves no purpose. I think for me, I pledged. I wasn't hazed. I think, at least from my understanding and everything that I have experienced thus far, everything that I did served a purpose in the process, like in those moments.
We were given a final opportunity to leave before the abuse became physical. We were sitting down in a row after a night of reciting information, and they showed us the segment from Spike Lee's School Days that depicted frat pledges sleeping, being surprised, being verbally harassed, physically abused, and paddled by Breaking Bad's Gustavo Fring and Ron from a Different World, among others. They demonstrated some of this violence on other chapter members, then left it up to us to decide whether or not we wanted to proceed. None of the 5 eventual members of the line moved. And I'll speak for myself when I say the reason for that was a twisted sense of loyalty to my line brothers, combined with a desire to prove that I'm tough enough. It didn't help that the movie scene was exaggerated and goofy, so it didn't seem realistic or shocking to me. Here's a more accurate depiction of what it's like today.
Eat that shit. You want to be a lander, huh? Huh? Don't. Prince. Shit. Stop moving, shit. Don't touch my hand. You want to be a lander, huh? You blocking me?
I am the Dean of Pledges. This is my line, and every bruise above the neck leads to suspicion.
You want me to rip that fucking brain off your chest? Get the fuck out of my way. Get back in line.
We were not given a real choice here, to be clear. The fact that we were in the room with our fellow pledges and the chapter brothers were staring at us makes it extremely coercive. We went through our first rotation of physical abuse not long after. The 6th potential member of the line that I mentioned earlier wasn't there for that and had dropped out before our first official night online. The details get fuzzy around the timeline, but I remember everything about the first night. It was the worst night of my life. Up until that point in the process, we were at an off-campus house in Atlanta, and every night had been over at a relatively reasonable time. I don't think I have to tell y'all that it was normal to be up super late in college. The night we started pledging was different in 2 distinct ways. We drove way out to one of the older brothers' houses that we visited during pre-pledging, and we had to sit in our car for like 3 hours until we got the call saying that they were ready for us. And this brother was like 40-something years old, by the way. In this video, I'm going to talk about the first night that we went online. and how scared I was.
I was scared shitless.
You realize that not only were we children going through this, we were I was 19 years old.
Oh yeah, I had just turned 19.
Yeah.
Right when we started.
Yeah, so we're 19-year-olds. I was not only was I 19, I had facial paralysis when this was happening. So not only are we're going through this as teenagers, but people who are barely older than us are the ones in charge of our safety. And I don't know if you remember being 2021, I was not in a position to be. No, I was not smart.
I was not smart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my main point, is that we're not, like, the fact that we were trusted, or we trusted ourselves with that kind of responsibility, is also daunting in retrospect.
Right.
In the fall of 1989, 18-year-old Morehouse College sophomore Joel Harris collapsed during an Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity ritual and died at the hospital. The pledges were reciting fraternity history, just like we had to, and there were punishments for getting information wrong, which we also experienced. Back in 1989, things were rougher than they are now, for the most part.
Let's get the brand up to there we go.
That's that Kappa Alpha Psi. Yes, sir.
They were on the cusp of major crackdowns on hazing, but it was still very prevalent, both before and after.
Beating somebody is dumb. So what has it led to? It's led to death. You can't come back from death. It's led to
Now, I'm going to give you an FBI profiler secret that you may not know, but if you understand this, you will forever be transformed. Anytime you want to catch a person in the lie, look at their eyes. The human man, a human person, unless they're a sociopath or psychopath, we're talking regular people, if they're talking about anything, any subject, the moment that they start to speak, a millisecond, slightly a millisecond, before they start to speak about something they don't necessarily 100% believe, they're going to look away to the left or to the right. Most of the time, it's to the left. It's a secret tell that you learn if you play poker. You learn if you're a cop and you do interrogations, FBI profiler, anyone that deals with talking to people. We give off certain signals. It's called body language. Body language experts talk about this all the time, especially when it deals with criminals. Well, you notice if you listen and watch Roland speak, and everyone that's on this channel, you'll notice it as well. The moment they start speaking, they're going to look away to the left or to the right for a millisecond. They come back to the camera. You'll see this all the time. You might do it yourself and not know until you watch it on cell phone video. But it's a great lesson. He does not necessarily agree with what he just said. He states in the statement that that hazing is wrong, but he went through it himself. And let me show you exactly what when he gives a look right here.
So that's my main point, is that we're not, like, the fact that we were trusted, or we trusted ourselves with that kind of responsibility, is also daunting in retrospect.
Right.
In the fall of 1989, 18-year-old Morehouse College sophomore Joel Harris collapsed during an Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity ritual and died at the hospital. The pledges were reciting fraternity history, just like we had to, and there were punishments for getting information wrong, which we also experienced. Back in 1989, things were rougher than they are now, for the most part.
Let's get the brand up to there we go.
That's that Kappa Alpha Psi. Yes, sir.
They were on the cusp of major crackdowns on hazing, but it was still very prevalent, both before and after.
beating somebody is dumb. So what has it led to? It's led to death.
I'm going to play it again, but the moment he says, what has it led to? It's, right at the word, it's led to death, the word it's, you'll see is look away. Now, this is a tell that what he says, number one, either A, and this could be two things, maybe more. He's lying, He doesn't completely believe what he's saying. B, he knows that what he's about to say is going to offend some people, and he's nervous, but he says it anyway, right? Those are two big, could be two, and it's a third. He's recalling an event that happened in his life, and he's speaking from the standpoint of, I went through this, and I don't want other people to go through it, because there's some people that went through some really bad hazing processes, and now they're in a defense of stopping it. They want to fight to stop it because they went through it. Most people, like I said, 99% of African Americans that even get involved in Greekdom never experienced this. It's that ignorant 1% men, kids that don't have nothing to lose. They weren't going to graduate from college. They weren't going to get jobs. They knew their police report could destroy their whole career. When you have something to lose, you're not going to do these things because you know what you could lose. Your life. Okay? But if you think about it, when it comes to the streets, when a brother's been killing somebody and he's in a gang, he don't got nothing else to lose. He's already done the worst. So we gotta, you wanna join our game? You gotta get rat packed. Well, the attorney is not all the way like that, but there is a rites of passage. You gotta prove your worth.
You can't come back from death. It's led to massive lawsuits. It's led to Divine Nine spending millions of dollars on settlements because some fool decided to hit somebody and made somebody run and somebody died from exhaustion. That is stupid. A mother or a father does not send their child to college to return home in a body bag. That is not what the process is supposed to be about.
Harris was subjected to a circuit of punishments, including one called Thunder and Lightning, which involved getting hit in the chest and slapped in the face. Another was called Free Fall, which involved elbows, slaps, and punches to the chest. He collapsed in the midst of all this, and the postmortem showed abrasions that looked like fingernail marks on his chest. Members denied striking him, and his cause of death was an abnormal heart rhythm linked to congenital heart disease. His mother, Adrienne, crusaded against pledging after his death, and the NPHC banned traditional pledging 4 months after. Alpha Phi Alpha's most recent death that we know of occurred in 2018 when Tyler Hilliard collapsed while pledging at UC Riverside. Attorneys discovered that university officials investigated hazing allegations years prior, indicating that this was an existing pattern of behavior. My chapter considered themselves too evolved to hit people in the chest and slap them in the face, since those were all known to result in deaths and serious injuries. Instead, they resorted to things they considered to be safer, such as slaps on the back, shoving, intense exercises, psychological abuse, paddling, and occasional attacks to any other part of the body that was considered safer to target. That first night at the older chapter brother's house was like getting jumped into a gang. That's really the most accurate way I can describe it. It started at 3 a.m. or so and felt like a ceremony that was gonna end in us being on almost level ground with the brothers of the chapter, with us crossing the burning sands into the next phase of pledging. Then the masks we were wearing were pulled off our faces, and we were immediately sent into a barrage of physical abuse that had no connection to the accuracy of any information we were reciting. It was an excuse for young men to beat on even younger men in the garage of a much older man. It was confusing, loud, and terrifying. If we made a mistake, or they just felt like it had been too long since we were hit, we had to take more punishment. We left with contusions and scratches and met back at the original off-campus house every night after that. We'd usually get a more peaceful session after the really intense nights like that, so we could recover and have some sense of normalcy, which is all part of the manipulation. If it was super violent every night, nobody would make it through. There were nights where we weren't touched at all, and our time was spent reciting info, doing skits or songs as part of our nightly routine, then going home. This helped further the idea that we were responsible for them hurting us. For the most part, the process followed the whims of the dean. If he had a girl over or just didn't feel like doing all that shit that night, it was an easy night for us. No matter what, though, we had to sit around one of our line brothers' apartments, waiting for the call. We knew it was going to be a rough night when the call didn't come in until after midnight. Or if it was a weekend, when more of the brothers would be free to haze us. Homecoming is always the worst night because that's when the alumni were in town and would walk in the house like, "Do you know my name?" We had to memorize the names of every line and line member that crossed before us, stretching back to 1999. So we'd panic trying to put a face to a name without being able to look them in the eyes. Oh yeah, that was one of the rules. No eye contact, along with walking on grass and all the rest of it. Usually, we just discreetly steal a peek at the brother in question and then pass the info down the line. Imagine being 19 years old and 6 to 8 unknown men step into a room that's already hostile and full of older college students. These new men are anywhere from 30 to 45 years old. Most are bigger than you, and you know most of them are not here to be an ally. They eat all the food you had to buy for the house while mocking you and participating in your punishments as a way to show that they still got it. It's just a big ego stroke for everybody involved. Were there times where brothers were either acting out of ego, acting out of just mocking someone that's younger than them and abusing their power?
Absolutely.
And times where you felt that the physical harm crossed the line or was completely unnecessary? So if all those things are true, can you still say that this is something we should be doing at all? And also, I would ask you to factor in what's going to be a big part of this video I'm creating is all the deaths and the ways they've happened. Some people have died just as a result of doing strenuous exercise and nothing more. And so if that's all it takes to create such a drastic result or drastic outcome, going further than that, which is any form of laying your hands on somebody,
Right.
can you still say that that has a justified place in the pledging process?
This is so hard. It's so hard to reckon with because I guess for me it always comes down to like how do you earn your stripes per se? How do you earn your spot being here? Being a part of these orgs is not a given. It's a privilege. And it's, for me, it's if we get rid of that, what is the alternative?
Remember Caleb Wilson? He was allegedly punched in the chest by a graduate of Southern University, Caleb McCrae. These older members don't just sit and watch. They paddle you, slap you, push you, and wrestle you. I often considered leaving and fought back often since I had an anger problem, but the frequent message disseminated by the chapter was that dropping line is a sign of weakness, that you're tougher for sticking it out. The most compelling part of that psychological manipulation was that I'd be leaving my line brothers defenseless, since I was the line member in the back. We call that person a tail in the D9 organizations. Usually it's just the tallest person on the line, since we always line up in height order. But I actually chose it, since the line brother directly in front of me is 6'2" like I am. 19 felt mature enough at the time, but in retrospect, we were teens being tortured by young adults. It gives me a new perspective on what people go through joining the military before they can legally drink. Except this was worse than anything you're legally allowed to go through in basic training. Pledges dying in twos is not a one-off anomaly. On November 20th, 2010, East Carolina University students Victoria Carter and Brianna Gather, both 20 years old, died in a car accident after flying off the road in Greenville while pledging with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Camille Arrington was designated as their driver by members of the chapter, and she survived, along with 19-year-old Taylor King. Arrington was charged with misdemeanor death by motor vehicle. She was apparently suffering from excessive and overwhelming fatigue, exhaustion, and sleep deprivation, according to the lawsuit, and fell asleep behind the wheel. This incident is the latest occurrence of hazing-related death that we know of, attributed to Delta Sigma Theta. This particular story isn't over. I'm going to bring it back after I break down the pledging practice known as Hell Week. Real quick, there's a stage before Hell Week where your restrictions are lifted and you're allowed to fight back against the chapter members, at least within my chapter. Alphas call it ape stage, since the ape is the unofficial mascot of the organization. Essentially, you could be in a situation where one of the chapter brothers push you and you push him back, then everybody clears out. It's essentially a one-on-one cage match between you and that brother, and everybody else just circles around and watches. I chipped my bottom tooth when I body slammed a member of the chapter after he called me out one time. We're also given bricks to take care of that have the fraternity letters and our chapter initials on it. We have to take care of them during set, which is what we call those sessions that we met up at. Sometimes the chapter members will try to take your bricks while you're reciting information, and you'll get in trouble if nobody notices that or tries to prevent it. You know, just mind games like that. We got to hold those bricks out like dumbbells on a regular basis while reciting information. Okay, Hell Week. It's one of those terms that doesn't really need an explanation, but at the same time it does, because it's worse than whatever you're thinking. It's not one of those superficial labels that just means the chapter members up the ante a little bit and don't let up for a week. There's new, more creative forms of torture rolled out specifically for your last week of the process. In our case, meaning within my chapter, not only did the physical violence ramp up for no apparent reason, there was also new abuses. Eating a raw onion without vomiting. Extended exercise periods where breaking formation or position meant more violence. Sleep deprivation. Being taken out into a forest and forced to find each other blindfolded while making animal noises. The list of humiliations was extensive. Again, they considered themselves evolved since they didn't do any of the more disgusting things some white fraternities forced pledges to do, but it's just more excuses to assuage their guilt. Hell Week is a different experience for everyone at each chapter. The Deltas I mentioned earlier had a version of Hell Week where they ate a Delta apple, which was that same onion I mentioned before. And some of their exercises match ours too. Delta chair, where they stood on one leg and held a brick above their head. Delta lipstick, which was hot sauce smeared on their lips. Sadistic shit like that. Some people are beaten bloody, experience even more extreme sleep deprivation, etc. We saw our share of bloody moments, but we encountered some chapters that had it much worse than we did. Unfortunately, some don't survive it at all. Donnie Wade Jr. was a 20-year-old student at Prairie View A&M in 2009 and died while pledging Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. He and his fellow pledges were put on a strict bread and water diet, got paddled, did the exercises, etc. They do these exercises at 4 to 5 in the morning when the pledges were sleep deprived, and the workouts included things like elevating your feet 6 inches off the ground, Indian runs where we all run and the last person in line has a sprint to the front over and over again, bleacher sprints, knuckle push-ups, you name it. We did all that stuff too. During one of their sessions, Wade collapsed and never regained consciousness. Fraternity members told investigators that some in the Delta Theta chapter of Phi Beta Sigma were more concerned with, in their words, avoiding a paper line of non-hazed members than they were in the safety of their prospective initiates. Donnie was a biology major, studying to be a doctor. Wade's mother, Katrina, blames hazing for taking her only son from her. She said, "I will not rest until I am sure no other families will go through what we have." I crossed in fall 2009. Donnie died when I was in the middle of my pledging process. And I didn't even hear about it at the time. The culture of secrecy and suppression is so heavy that other fraternities didn't even think to stop what they're doing, rethink their processes, assess their internal ethics. Nothing. That could have been any one of us. And my parents would be the ones filing a lawsuit or campaigning for change. I hope they don't judge me too harshly when they see this, because this story isn't over just yet. There's an official national process that takes place while you're wrapping up the chapter process. You put in applications to join the fraternity, show up for a couple of days to go through a quick initiation that involves zero hazing, pay a registration fee, pin fee, chapter dues, all that, which I had to borrow money for, and complete the paperwork. Throughout this initiation, some pledges had to pretend in front of all these middle-aged men that they weren't currently being hazed. The thing is, they know. They all know most of us are being hazed at the moment. And the pledges talk about it openly between themselves. It's the worst kept secret in the world, but the entire system depends on nobody snitching. The main point I want y'all to take away from this is that no one in this system is innocent. The mentors, the regional directors, the chapter advisors, almost all guilty, almost all aware. A Lincoln University vice president of enrollment and student life was cleared of wrongdoing in 1999 after an attorney brought accusations over him watching it happen and saying nothing. As Byron Hurt's hazing doc stated, power has a way of protecting itself. Very few schools get held accountable for this. We had advisors at Georgia Tech who knew it was happening and did nothing. One of them was an alumnus of our chapter and stepped away because he knew for a fact that we were hazing. One of the regional directors knew we were hazing and joked around with us in whispers while we went through the official process. This section is supposed to be a palate cleanser, though. Let's get to the good part. All right, this is a part of the story most college students are aware of, the part the public is supposed to see. We crossed on November 13th, 2009, and completed our pledging process. It felt just like the first night, except they're suddenly celebrating us instead of beating on us. After that, you're a full member of the chapter, and it's time to debut for the campus at large in your probate show. There's flyers made, a promo video, you get a crispy haircut and dope outfits, and the whole Black community shows up to celebrate your moment. There's step choreography we worked on for weeks, elaborate songs and funny skits we had to practice performing every night. Then each member gets their big moment. Step out, say your name, remove your mask, crowd goes wild, women ooh and ah. Half the people there knew you were doing it, and the other half didn't know you at all. For them, it's a hell of an intro. Parents and siblings show up, significant others hold balloons with your number, all that. I didn't have any of it because I was essentially cut off from my community in Atlanta and kept the secret from them, granted. Didn't really care too much though, to be honest. I was just happy to talk to my friends and return to normalcy again. You basically return to campus life with an elevated social status and excuse to walk around with the most gaudy jewelry and shirts on for the rest of the semester. Then, for some of us, comes the crash. I don't know if I said this earlier, but I attended Georgia Tech, the Georgia Institute of Technology, bruh. I had to get a perfect 800 on a reading SAT just to get in that joint, and I was an engineer at the time. Our frats like to brag about scholarship and service, but there's no real protocols for the effect hazing has on your grades or your ability to serve anyone. I'd withdrawn from membership in ASU and NESB, was failing 2 classes, and failed another one in the next semester before ultimately ending up on academic probation and changing majors. I did really well after that, but between suffering 1 semester and partying too much the next semester, school really fell down in my list of priorities until I got my shit together. We're gonna fast forward a couple of lines later, And now I'm in charge of discipline, while one of my line brothers is the dean of pledges. Yes, we perpetrated the same violence that was done to us onto other young men who looked up to and trusted us. I perpetrated that violence with my hands, with my voice, with my silence, while others did the same. This abuse included slapping them on the back, paddling, intense workouts, verbal abuse, mockery, and humiliation. The normalization of that violence is what enables a new initiate to keep the cycle going. Everyone just treated it like it was normal, like this was a rite of passage everyone just deals with. None of it is an excuse, and I sincerely apologize to everyone I helped victimize as part of that system. Nothing I say here can heal that harm we did to you, and I hope you can forgive me one day. But forgiveness is for you. You don't owe me that. I hope you've all found the peace that I'm building for myself. Did you subject others to physical harm after you were initiated?
Yes. Part of the responsibility of brothers once they're in is to also participate in bringing more brothers in as they come through. And some of that includes furthering those traditions and keeping those in place. I will say that from my standpoint, things were not as chaotic as they have been in the past. That is certainly something that a lot of us in our chapter took the time to think about moving forward. Because I mean, we see the stories too. We know how any sort of incident looks on all of us.
I'll list off the remaining organizations that haven't killed anyone that we know of, but are complicit in serious injuries and psychological harm to survivors. Criminal charges were brought against Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated chapter members in 2004 after a pledge said she was paddled, pushed against walls, and more at Southern Illinois University. Her chest and arms were severely bruised, and the perpetrators included students and alumni. The charges were later dropped, and there's info in the description about another case that occurred at OSU in 2013, where a chapter was suspended. Criminal charges were brought against Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated chapter members at Lincoln University in 2015, after a student was injured during initiation hazing procedures. The two chapter members were suspended, then later charged with aggravated assault and lesser charges. Lastly, a Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated chapter at Bowling Green University was permanently suspended in 2022 for severe hazing violations that violated 6 of their student safety policies. They also exhibited a pattern of secrecy and deception in an effort to avoid detection, which happens at every chapter that hazes students. The list of things they did is included in the source, and it's not a pleasant read. So, what's being done to stop this? Well, I left out some of the repercussions and consequences for that reason. There have been serious crackdowns and other situations where the people in charge of protecting these teens and young adults absolutely dropped the ball. The deal that kept Kanitha and Kristen's cases out of court included a financial payout that the families are not allowed to disclose and a promise by the sorority to work harder to end hazing, which I don't know what that means. More than a dozen men associated with Kappa Alpha Psi were prosecuted after Michael Davis's death, including 7 for involuntary manslaughter. Sentences ranged from probation to incarceration. The fraternity was banned from Southeast. The fallout included legislation in Missouri, creating a felony for serious hazing, and national scrutiny of fraternity hazing practices. In 1996, the Kappa Alpha Psi National Organization paid $2.25 million to David's parents as part of a lawsuit. The 2 deaths associated with Delta Sigma Theta resulted in the ECU chapter getting suspended until 2015, which was a 5-year ban. Victoria Carter's mother, Bernadette, filed a wrongful death suit against the driver of the car and amended it later to add sorority members to the list of defendants. There's databases of chapters that have been suspended temporarily or permanently on the official sites of many of the D9 organizations. But I can tell you from personal experience that it's practically impossible to stop these underground processes.
How do we build that bond outside of that? You know, especially when, like, the only thing that I can maybe think of is like you make that long term, but then it's like, how do you long term college?
D9 doesn't see pledging as a college thing. This is for life. So, do you think trauma is necessary to build the correct version of an alpha man?
I guess that's a part of the conversation that we have to be a part of, because the answer is no. The feeling is that's what I experienced and that's what I know.
Yeah.
And I have seen that work for plenty of us. Like, I don't think I would change anything about how things went with me. I don't think I would be in the position that I'm in today had they went, without hazing or pledging. Even with the situations that went bad, like I don't think that I would be in the position that I'm in right now had all of that just went so smoothly.
As long as we hold up abuse as the only way to confirm someone's real membership in these communities, more parents will get terrible news in the middle of the night. We've adopted the same tactics slave owners used to break and manipulate our ancestors, the same tactics cult leaders use. Hazing does not strengthen men or women. These organizations are killing people. A large number of older members in every organization are complicit, and the only people who can really make a difference are those who went through it. I feel the same way about the D9 as I feel about the American government and our two-party system. It needs to be torn down from the inside. I stepped away from active pledging activities after the first line I actively brought through and distanced myself from it altogether upon graduation. I went on a Twitter rant about the treatment of women by Georgia Tech's D9 chapter some years back as well, and mentioned how I was hazed. Wasn't received well then, probably won't be received well now either. In case it wasn't obvious, I'm officially denouncing my membership in Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated until such time that considerable efforts are put forth to eliminate this problem across the board. I'm not asking anyone to join me. I know that I'm in a unique position due to the fact that I haven't surrounded myself with the brotherhood in my 30s. I am asking you to share this with anyone considering joining one of these organizations, as well as any alumni who remain silent. This problem is not something I can solve with one video. All I can do is use this platform to end my silence. Y'all got the information now. Can't say I didn't tell you.
Take it with a grain of salt. A guy who never served after he became a member, but one semester, sadly, he got to a top-notch white school with great grades and had failed those courses and messed his GPA up, but he had to change majors. Maybe he should have went grad chapter. Or if he was so about that education, maybe he should have just done that first. I think a lot of answers to these questions is you need to do your homework. Don't join something you haven't done your own research. We're talking 3, 4, 5 years of research. Not just, I met somebody on campus I want to join. That's so ignorant. If he had actually saw videos on YouTube, and that, of course, it's 2009, so YouTube wasn't as famous as it is today. But still, we had MySpace. We did have internet. We had AOL, MySpace. Facebook had started in 04, so we had Facebook. I'm sorry, but I can't use this argument. With all the things that are wrong, it's the 1% of brothers. I can't throw out the whole bathwater with 1% of guys. We have lots of great brothers who've served 70 years in the order, and they've done wonderful. And I'm gonna be one of those brothers. I got 20 years. I hope to be here for the next 50. I know that's 100. I'd be 100 years old, but still, that's get all dream.